There's an animal part of our nature, which is we completely take appearances for reality. The front that people present, the way they look, the way they talk to us, their words, we sort of take at face value. That makes us extremely vulnerable to charming people, to charlatans, to con artists, to politicians who say one thing and do another, to relationships, terrible relationships where we fall in love. A lot of human communication is nonverbal. We don't pay much attention to that because we're so word-oriented. There's an animal part of our nature, which is we completely take appearances for reality. That's sort of the source of our problems and our misery, to be honest with you, in life. So the front that people present, the way they look, the way they talk to us, their words, we sort of take at face value. And although we might think, or we might know from reading a book or whatever, that you can't always trust appearances, is kind of a cliche. We can't control ourselves. So it makes us extremely vulnerable to charming people, to charlatans, to con artists, to politicians who say one thing, who do another, to relationships, terrible relationships where we fall in love with exactly the wrong person, to the worst kind of hires. You know, I do a lot of consulting work. I've been doing it for over 20 years now. The number one problem I deal with is I hired the worst person in the world and they're making my life hell, right? And why did you hire the wrong person? Because you judged them on their charming smiles, their appearance, their smooth talk, their resume, which you can conceal a lot with your resume. You didn't look behind the facade and look at what's underneath, the character. So this is kind of ingrained in our nature. It goes back thousands and thousands of years. It's extremely difficult to overcome, right? And I have the problem too. I deal with it all the time. And I have to go through a process where I step back and I say, I don't want to be paranoid, but this person is so nice and pleasant. Is there something else going on behind the curtain that's there? You know, and then sometimes I tell myself, no, I have ways of judging that there's a consistency between the face and the reality, but oftentimes there is not, and I've become very good at that kind of bullshit detection, which I've been doing my whole life. You know, some things are hard to put into words, which is why I struggle so much with my books. Because a lot of human communication, I estimated 95%, it's just a number, is nonverbal, right? So we don't pay much attention to that because we're so word-oriented, right? We're so embedded in language that we think everything in terms of what people say. But unconsciously, without even realizing it, we're continually judging people on their nonverbal behavior, right? So their eyes, their smile are different from what they actually say, but we're not really. So in a kind of a natural, intuitive way, we understand that, but we don't trust those kind of judgments, right? So we rely more on what they say than on what the signals that we pick up from their body language. So years and years of training and being sensitive to it, it's probably something that has to go back to my childhood. If you put me on a couch and psychoanalyze me right here, there was probably something in my childhood where I had to learn how to really read people, not by what they said, but everything about them. And I have a kind of an intuitive feel for the energy, the vibrations, the mood that people give off, not through what they say, but through their body, through particularly their tone of voice and all the other signals. That is the main way of judging, you know, what's really going on. The other thing you look at are people's patterns of behavior, right? Things that have happened in the past. As I said in Laws of Human Nature, nobody ever does something just once, right? If somebody fucks up and does something kind of hurts you in some way, and they say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me, that's not me. Don't trust that. It'll happen again. For sure it will happen again a second, a third, a fourth time. There's a perverse part of human nature, which is oftentimes in early childhood, something happened to us, often something that didn't happen to us, like the love we didn't get or the nurturing that we didn't get. There's this kind of wound, this emptiness, this lack, right? And we grow up and we're not really aware of it, and kind of things grow over this wound. But what also happens, which is the perverse side of human nature, is that early on, our kind of sexual excitement is kind of grows up around that wound. When you're very young, you're extremely vulnerable. You're extremely open to the energies of other people in ways we don't understand right now, right? It's hard to imagine something what I'm writing about right now in my new book. When you're 2 years old, 1 year old, before you even had really mastered language, you're so dependent on other people. You're so open to them that their energy gets infused. It's completely internalized. And also, children at that age also have their sort of sexual nature is being created at that moment, at a very, very early age. Certain desires. For us, sex is not just a physical thing, it's an emotional thing, right? It's psychological. So things that we didn't get are charged with all of this kind of energy that then could later on turn into sort of desires. So let's say, for instance, you had a mother who was very narcissistic, who really wasn't giving you the normal mother, nurturing, empathetic energy. It was more about her, and you had to pay attention to her, right? Well, that kind of creates this sort of desire. You're as an infant, you really want that love from that mother. You're trying to drag, you're trying to attract, you pull it out of her as best you can. And your energy, your desire is surrounding her with this kind of emotional charged sexual energy. And you're going to find throughout your life, you are going to be attracted to narcissistic women. It's going to be your Achilles heel throughout your life, because you want to kind of heal that wound. You want to be able to play back that initial trauma and sort of rewrite the way it ended up, where now you're going to find this narcissistic woman and she's going to give you finally what you never had before, right? It's a very, very common pattern, right? And so you're not even aware of this. And it's extremely difficult to break out of, because your desire is for this type of person. So you might meet a woman, just doing it from a man's point of view, who isn't narcissistic, who's very empathetic and very caring. And she would be perfect for you. And you may even have a relationship with her. But the excitement, the energy, that charge isn't going to be as strong as with that other type. And you're going to fall back into the old patterns again and again and again. And the only way out of it is to go back and look at your early childhood and look at these wounds and confront them face to face and understand that you're a prisoner of this kind of things that were ingrained at you at a very, very early age. You have to look at what's going on in the present right now. You have to be, first of all, it depends on how old you are and how many relationships you have. But you have to see your own patterns. And if you have unhealthy patterns where you have fallen again and again and again for the wrong person, you have to see a sort of a through line there. What ties it all together? What's going on, right? So, a common scenario that I wrote about in Human Nature is, in this particular scenario where your mother is giving you the attention that you think you want, right? You have this feeling when you're a child, 3 or 4 years old, that mother is abandoning you. That's almost your fault in that case, right? Because you don't want to believe that a parent could be wrong or flawed, because it's too painful a thought. So you want to think that you are flawed and she has abandoned you for some reason. It's very painful. So what you're going to do throughout your life is you're always going to be the one cutting off a relationship before it gets too intense, so that you don't ever have to go through that abandonment feeling again, right? That's your pattern, right? So after 6 months, the relationship is kind of, growing. You'll find some excuse. She's not right for me. She's saying the wrong things. She's da-da-da-da-da. You'll break off the relationship, blaming her, when in fact, you're afraid, deeply afraid that she's going to abandon you and you can't stand that. So you've got to see these patterns, and they're very painful and they're very difficult, because they're touching upon things that go to the heart of who we are. It's not just in your relationships. You're going to probably be doing that with your jobs as well. You're going to be quitting jobs before before you get to the point where you have too much responsibility. They're very, very deeply ingrained in you, and you have to be able to look at them. So awareness is everything. The ability to look at yourself realistically and understand, you're saying, see things as they are, see the world as it is. It begins with yourself. seeing yourself as you are, right? And seeing that your adult self that's so confident and has this, this way about the world is covering over some wounds, some vulnerabilities from your deep childhood. Not everybody, but for a lot of people, that's the case. You have to be willing to rip away the skin and look underneath and see that wound and touch upon it. Sometimes, you need help in these areas, depending on the depth of the wound. So sometimes you need a third person's eyes on it. You can't necessarily analyze it yourself, which is why you might want to go into therapy, or you might want a spouse or significant other or someone you love and trust who can tell you these things, because sometimes it's very hard for you to have any kind of distance from them, But the ability to detach yourself from your own emotions is extremely important in life. It doesn't mean that you become a cold, rational person at all. I don't believe in that at all. Emotions are extremely important for us. It's what makes us creative. It's what feeds our imagination, gives us drive. But the ability that you can gain over your life in this instant and in every other instant to have a degree of a detachment, it's only a matter of degree, where you can stand back and you feel something very powerfully. You feel attracted to something or a person. You feel excited or repulsed. And to not react and to step back and analyze and go, why am I feeling this right now? Is it because of what somebody is saying right now? Or does it go deeper to that? Is it related to some other issue? That is a skill that is not easy, but you can develop it day by day by day, taking little steps. And so if you're able to slowly detach yourself from your day-to-day emotional reactions, it gives you a little bit of distance between you and your ego. When I'm meditating, I become deeply aware. These thoughts start coming up, they bubble up, you can't control them. You become deeply aware of your ego, of certain patterns in your thinking, of certain anxieties, of certain kind of neurotic thought patterns, right? You're seeing it before your eyes. It's floating there. This is your ego, Robert. It's going here, there, and there. You can see it. And now, when you're in that state, you can almost see it as if it's another person. And it's very powerful and it's very liberating. Now, in the case of someone who's dealing with a deep wound, I don't know if you can't go there like tomorrow and do this. I'm a realistic person. I'm very practical. I don't want to advise people something that's not going to happen. It's something that you're going to have to, it's a life skill that you have to build. The power to take a step back and look at yourself with some distance and see that ego as if it's over there, it's floating in front of you, it's giving you signs of who you are. You can develop that, and it's very powerful, and it will give you the ability to look at your own wounds objectively. But you're never going to reach a degree of 100% detachment. Me, who has been practicing this for many years, I still get caught up in those wounds. I still get caught up in my ego. It's just a matter of degree, that if you're trapped in these patterns and you feel a great degree of pain and your life isn't going anywhere and you're having bad relationships, bad work habits, and you say, I can't deal with this anymore, you're extremely motivated to go through the process that you just mentioned, which is, after every event that occurs, you go through a kind of an autopsy, right? And you analyze. You can do this on a daily basis with a journal, or you can do it on a weekly basis. What did I do there? What was the element of where I actually might have created the problem between me and another person? And I have to be reasonably rational, and I have to be reasonably realistic. You're right, if we saw completely into ourselves, we would hate ourselves so thoroughly that we wouldn't get out of bed, we would all be killing ourselves. You do need a degree of illusion. You do need a degree of self-esteem and confidence, right? So we all have, if we're not a deep narcissist, we have that thermostat where things start hurting us a little bit, and we bring ourselves back up through this self-esteem mechanism so we don't get too depressed and too down. And there's an element of unreality to that, but it's very valuable, and I would never, ever, ever want to burst that. You need a degree of illusion in your life. It's very important. But if you really want change, if you're really fed up, if you're not kidding yourself, if you're not going through this bullshit process, yeah, I kind of want to change my life, but you don't really mean it, then no words, no therapy will ever get you to that point. You almost have to hit bottom. You almost have to tell yourself, I can't take this anymore. And now the motivation is so deep that you're able now to begin the process of going through that kind of self-analysis, because it's the only way you're going to get out of it. It's the only way.